My sister is about to lose her house, and it's my fault. Well, that's not entirely true. It's her fault. I'm just the one collecting the debt. You see, a debt isn't always about money. Sometimes it's about a broken heart, a stolen dream, and a life that was ripped apart in front of 200 laughing guests. My name is Elizabeth Callahan, and I'm 34 years old. For most of my life, I was the nice one. The quiet daughter, the reliable friend, the sister who always forgave. I spent years building a perfect little life in our small Ohio town. I had a good job as a librarian, a small but cozy apartment, and a man I thought was my soulmate. The day I married James was supposed to be the best day of my life. I remember the sunlight pouring through the church windows, making my white dress glow. Everything was perfect, down to the last detail. My parents had saved for years to give me this dream day. It felt like a real-life fairy tale. My older sister, Delilah, was my maid of honor. She stood beside me, fixing my veil and telling me how beautiful I looked. She had always been the popular one, the funny one. Everyone loved Delilah. I loved her more than anyone. I thought she was my protector, my best friend. Just before I walked down the aisle, she slipped me a folded piece of paper. "Your vows," she whispered with a wink. "I rewrote them on a prettier card for you." She squeezed my hand and said, "You've got this." I trusted her completely. Why wouldn't I? She was my sister. The music started, and all eyes were on me. I saw James standing at the altar, looking so handsome in his suit. But as I got closer, I noticed something strange. His smile seemed tight, forced. There was a weird flicker in his eyes, like he was trying not to laugh. I told myself it was just nerves. When it was time for the vows, I unfolded the paper Delilah had given me. I took a deep breath and began to read. The first line was about loving James more than pizza. I stopped, confused. I glanced at the paper again. The next line was a promise to always let him win at video games. A few people in the front row started to chuckle. My face grew hot. I looked at Delilah for help, but she was smiling, a huge, proud grin on her face. Then I looked at James. He wasn't just smiling. He was laughing. A full, deep laugh. They were both in on it. This wasn't just a prank. This was a deep, dark betrayal that shattered my world in an instant. What would you do if your perfect day turned into your worst nightmare? Tell me where you're watching from in the comments. And if you want to see how I made them pay for every single tear, make sure you subscribe. Because the fake vows weren't the real secret. The real secret was what I found hidden in my husband's suit pocket later that night. A hotel key card and a note from my sister. It had only 7 words on it. The note was written in my sister's loopy handwriting on a cheap piece of paper. 7 words that burned into my mind forever. "See you at the hotel after this." Tucked beside it was a key card for the Grand Weaver Hotel, the fanciest place in town. The place they were supposed to go after humiliating me. At that moment, sitting on the floor of the empty bridal suite, the world went quiet. The pain was so sharp it felt like a physical thing, a shard of glass in my chest. They hadn't just betrayed me. They had planned to celebrate it together, in a hotel room, while I was left to pick up the pieces of my shattered heart. Let's go back to the altar. When the laughter hit me, I froze. I saw my father's face crumble with confusion and my mother's hand fly to her mouth in horror. The guests were whispering, pulling out their phones. My perfect day had become a circus, and I was the main attraction, the clown they all came to see. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I did something they never expected. I dropped the fake vows on the floor, turned my back on James, and walked right back down the aisle. The organist stopped playing. The only sound was the click of my heels on the marble floor as I walked out of that church and out of that life. James caught up to me outside, his face red with anger, not shame. "What is wrong with you, Liz?" he hissed. "You ruined everything. It was just a joke." A joke. He thought destroying my heart in front of everyone we knew was just a funny little joke. That was when I knew the man I loved never really existed. I ran to the bridal suite and locked the door before he could follow. His suit jacket was thrown over a chair, a careless mess. I was stuffing my own clothes into a bag when my hand brushed against the pocket. I wasn't looking for anything, I swear. But my fingers felt the hard plastic of the keycard. My blood ran cold. It wasn't just that they were having an affair. The real question that haunted me was, for how long? How many times had they laughed behind my back? How many secrets were hidden in plain sight? The full truth, I would later find out, was far worse than I could ever have imagined. The girl who walked into that church died at the altar. The woman who sat on that hotel floor was someone new. The tears stopped, and something cold and clear took their place. It was a promise. A promise that they would feel every ounce of pain they had caused me. I knew destroying them would be hard. Delilah was our parents' favorite, and James was the son of a powerful man. To take them down, I couldn't just be angry. I had to be smart. I had to find their weaknesses, the little secrets they thought no one knew about. I picked up my phone, my hand steady for the first time all day. I didn't call my mom or my best friend. I scrolled through my contacts and pressed the name of the one person who had the power to start it all. The call wasn't about the wedding. It was about a secret I knew about my father's retirement fund. My father answered on the second ring, his voice choked with panic. "Lizzie. Honey, where are you? We're so worried." I cut him off. My voice was steady, without a single tear. "Dad, I need you to listen to me. This isn't about the wedding. It's about your retirement. Your life savings." There was a confused silence on the line. I explained everything I knew. James's father, Mr. Thompson, managed the retirement fund for my dad's old company. For years, James and Delilah had been quietly moving small amounts of money from the accounts of retirees. It was their own secret savings plan, funded by the lives of good people. How did I know? I remembered a phone call I overheard a few months ago. Delilah was laughing with James, talking about their nest egg. She mentioned my father's name and someone else's, a Mr. Henderson. At the time, I thought it was a sick joke. Now I understood. It was a confession. My father's breathing was heavy. "Elizabeth, that's a terrible thing to say. The Thompsons are our friends." His denial was a wall I had to break through. "Dad," I said, my voice sharp, "call the bank tomorrow. Ask them why Mr. Henderson had to sell his house last year. Please, just trust me." He didn't say yes, but he didn't say no. He just whispered my name, full of sorrow. I hung up the phone. The first domino was pushed. James and his father would be ruined financially. But for my sister, I needed something more personal. I needed to destroy the perfect image she had built her entire life. That's when I remembered it. A small, purple diary with a broken lock. Delilah's teenage diary. She had filled it with every secret, every lie she ever told. It was hidden somewhere in the attic of our childhood home, a treasure chest of poison that I was now ready to open. I drove through the quiet streets to my parents' house. I expected to find them waiting, ready to wrap me in their arms. I had a story ready, a way to get them out of the house so I could search the attic alone. I needed to find that book. There was another secret in that diary, one I never understood as a child. It was a story about a car accident our neighbor had when I was 10. Delilah wrote about it in a way that always scared me, blaming herself for something I couldn't understand. What did she do? When I walked through the front door, my mother was there, her face swollen from crying. She hugged me tight, but my eyes drifted past her to the living room. My whole plan fell apart in a single heartbeat. Because Delilah was sitting on the couch, wrapped in our mother's favorite blanket. She was sobbing, playing the part of the heartbroken sister. When she saw me, her fake tears stopped, and her face twisted into a mask of pure hatred. "She's here," she screamed. "Mom, she ruined her own wedding and is trying to blame me." Delilah's words hung in the air, sharp and ugly. She had painted me as the crazy one, the bride who panicked and ran. My mother looked at me, her eyes begging me to deny it, to fix this. The old me would have screamed and cried. But the new me was silent. I looked right past my sister's hateful glare and met my mother's eyes. "I'm just tired, Mom," I said, my voice soft. "I think I'm going to go lie down in my old room for a bit." This wasn't the reaction Delilah wanted. She needed a fight, a drama. My quiet sadness confused her. "See," Delilah snapped, jumping up from the couch. "She's avoiding it because she knows she's guilty." I stopped at the bottom of the stairs and turned. "Guilty of what?" I asked calmly. "Delilah, why don't you tell Mom and Dad about the key to the Grand Weaver Hotel I found in James's pocket?" The color drained from her face. My mother frowned. "A hotel key? What are you talking about?" My father said nothing, but his eyes narrowed, watching Delilah's every move. The first crack in her perfect story had appeared. I didn't wait for an answer. I just walked upstairs. I didn't go to my room. I went straight to the end of the hall, to the pull-down cord for the attic. The wooden stairs unfolded with a groan. The air that hit my face was cold and smelled of dust and memories. My heart was a drum against my ribs as I climbed into the darkness. This was a treasure hunt, but I wasn't looking for gold. I was looking for dynamite. I moved past old dolls and boxes of my school trophies. I knew exactly where to look. We had a secret hiding spot when we were kids, a big, hollowed-out book where we kept our most important things. I wonder what Delilah would do if she knew I remembered all her secrets. Does she ever think about the things she did? Or does she just bury them, hoping they stay gone forever? People like my sister believe the past can be erased, but it can't. It's always there, waiting in the dark. And there it was. An old copy of Little Women. My hands were shaking as I opened the cover. Tucked inside the carved-out pages was the small, purple diary. It felt heavy in my hands, heavy with the power to ruin her. I finally had the weapon I was looking for. I flipped through the pages, past silly drawings and notes about boys, until I found the year I was looking for. The entry was dated the day after our neighbor, Mr. Henderson, crashed his car. My eyes scanned the childish handwriting until I saw one sentence. "I only cut one of the wires. I didn't think it would make the car explode." Before I could process the horror of those words, the attic floorboard creaked loudly behind me. I spun around, my heart leaping into my throat. My father was standing there, his face pale and sick. He was holding his cell phone. "Lizzie," he whispered, his voice trembling. I called the bank. "It's worse than you think. It's not just gone, Lizzie." My father's voice was a ghost in the dusty attic air. "They took out loans. In my name. In your mother's name. They used our house, everything we've ever worked for, as collateral." He wasn't just broke. He was drowning in a debt he never asked for. I looked down at the purple diary in my hands. The childish writing about a car crash, about cutting wires, suddenly felt connected to this new horror. Mr. Henderson lost his house, and then he lost his health. Now they were doing the same thing to my father. This wasn't just theft. It was a pattern of destruction. I couldn't show him the page about the accident. It was too much, too soon. Instead, I flipped to another page, one I remembered well. I showed him an entry where Delilah bragged about stealing $200 from our mom's purse for a concert, then letting me take the blame for it. He read the words, and I saw a flicker of a memory in his eyes. The fight, the grounding, the shame I felt for something I didn't do. He looked up at me, his face filled with a terrible sadness. The last bit of trust he had in his other daughter crumbled to dust. "She's been lying to us her whole life," he whispered. "Yes," I said, tucking the diary safely into my purse. "And now we let her lie her way into a trap. We had a plan. We wouldn't yell or scream. We would use the truth like a scalpel, making small, precise cuts until she bled her own secrets." We walked back downstairs into a strange silence. My mother was nervously arranging teacups, trying to create a moment of peace that was impossible. Delilah was on the couch, looking smug. She thought she had won. She thought I was broken and that her lies had saved her, just like they always did. My father walked past my mother and stood in front of Delilah. His voice was quiet, but it filled the entire room. "Delilah," he began, "I just had an interesting call with my bank manager." My sister looked up from her phone, her eyes full of annoyance, not fear. Her confidence was sickening. Did she feel any guilt at all? Looking at her, I realized she probably saw our parents' life savings as something she was owed, something she deserved more than they did. She believed she was smarter than everyone else, that she would never, ever get caught. "Oh, Dad, don't be dramatic," she said with a roll of her eyes. "You probably just forgot you paid a bill." Her words were like a slap in the face to my mother, who gasped. My father didn't even flinch. He was about to ask his question, the one we had planned. But before a single word could leave his mouth, a furious pounding rattled the front door. It wasn't a polite knock, it was the sound of rage. We all froze. My father opened the door to reveal a man I barely recognized. It was Mr. Thompson, James's dad, his face purple with fury. "Where is he?" he roared. "Where is my son?" Mr. Thompson stormed into our living room like a hurricane, and the target of his fury was my sister. He ignored the rest of us, his eyes locked on Delilah, who was shrinking into the couch cushions. "You," he growled. "Where is my son?" The smug, defiant girl was gone. In her place was a terrified animal caught in a trap. "I don't know," she cried, her voice thin and high. "He left after the wedding. He said he had a plan to handle everything." "This was all his idea, Mr. Thompson. I swear it was." Mr. Thompson let out a laugh that had no humor in it. "His idea? My bank statements show you spent the money just as fast as he could steal it." He finally turned to my father, his face broken. "He didn't just take your pension, Bill. He drained the whole fund. The Hendersons, the Millers, 20 families. He's ruined all of us." That was the blow that finally shattered my mother. The Millers were her best friends, people she had coffee with every Tuesday. The teacup in her hand slipped, shattering on the hardwood floor, the sound echoing the breaking of our family. She stared at Delilah with pure horror. I stood by the stairs, watching the chaos. My own plan for revenge felt small and slow compared to this. I wanted to carefully take their lives apart, piece by piece. But this was a wildfire, burning everything to the ground, and we were all trapped in the middle of it. But where was James? The question echoed in the tense silence. If he had run with all that money, he had left Delilah behind to face the fire alone. Was that his plan all along? To use her and then throw her away when things got bad? Delilah must have realized this, too. She saw the disgust in our mother's eyes and the fury on Mr. Thompson's face. She knew the lies wouldn't work anymore. So she did the only thing she could think of. She scrambled off the couch and made a panicked dash for the kitchen door. But my father, my quiet, gentle father, moved with a speed I'd never seen. He caught her by the arm before she took 3 steps. His grip was like iron. "No," he said, his voice deadly calm. "You are not running away from this." Just then, my phone buzzed. Annoyed, I glanced at the screen. It was a picture message from a number I didn't recognize. My heart stopped. The photo was of James. He was in a dark room, tied to a wooden chair. His eyes were wide with terror. A second later, another message came from the same number. It wasn't a demand for money or a threat. It was a simple question, 5 words that made the blood in my veins turn to ice. "Is this what you wanted?" My phone felt like a burning coal in my hand. The image of James, helpless and terrified, was seared into my brain. The question echoed, "Is this what you wanted?" I wanted revenge, yes. I wanted justice. But this was something else. This was violent and dangerous, and I was somehow at the center of it. I quickly shoved the phone deep into my purse. I couldn't let anyone see it. If Mr. Thompson saw that picture, he'd call the police, and this entire situation would explode. I needed to regain control. Up ahead, my father held Delilah's arm while Mr. Thompson yelled about lawsuits and prison. Stop! My voice cut through the noise, and everyone turned to look at me. If you call the police, I said, looking directly at Mr. Thompson, James will hide the money. It will be tied up for years. We will never get it back. I was speaking his language now. Not morality. Greed. He paused, his angry face calculating. My father looked at me, a question in his eyes, but he trusted me. He let go of Delilah's arm. In that moment, I took control of the storm. I was no longer the victim. I was the director of this nightmare. Who sent that message? The question hammered at my mind. Who hated James so much they would kidnap him? And how did they know I wanted revenge? A chilling thought crept in. Maybe James and Delilah had a long list of enemies. Maybe I wasn't the first life they had destroyed. She needs to leave, I said, nodding toward Delilah. I'll take her to her apartment so we can all think clearly. To everyone else, it sounded like a peace offering. For me, it was the next step in my plan. I had to get my sister alone. Delilah eagerly agreed, desperate to escape the rage of the two fathers. We walked out to my car, the silence between us heavier than a tombstone. The second she was in the passenger seat, I locked the doors. The click echoed in the small space. She was trapped with me now. For the first 10 minutes of the drive, neither of us spoke. She stared out the window, probably inventing a new reality where she was the victim. She thought she was safe, that she had escaped. She had no idea she had just walked from a wildfire into a cage with a monster. I kept my eyes on the road, my hands steady on the wheel. When I finally spoke, my voice was dangerously quiet. You know, it's funny the things you remember when your life falls apart, I said. Delilah stayed silent, refusing to look at me. I was thinking about Mr. Henderson, I continued, my voice as soft as silk. And his car crash, all those years ago. Wasn't it a strange coincidence that it happened just 1 week after he threatened to sue Mr. Thompson for fraud? It was like watching a mask crack and fall to pieces. Delilah's face, which a moment ago was hard with defiance, crumbled into pure terror. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered, but her shaking hands gave away the lie. She was cornered, and she knew it. I kept my voice low and steady, a surgeon making a careful cut. Let me help you remember. You used Dad's wire cutters. You wrote in your purple diary that you only meant to scare him, not for him to crash. You wrote, I only cut one of the wires. That was it. The dam broke. Sobs ripped from her chest, ugly and desperate. I was a kid, she shrieked. I was 16. Mr. Henderson was going to ruin the Thompsons, and I had to protect them. I had to protect James. The pathetic confession hung in the air between us. She wasn't protecting a boy she loved. She was protecting a bank account. Even as a teenager, she knew exactly what she was doing. She was choosing a life of wealth and power, and was willing to sacrifice anyone who got in her way. The girl next to me was a stranger. My mind flashed again to the picture on my phone. James, tied to a chair. And Mr. Henderson, the man who lost everything. He lost his savings, his job, his health. A man who has nothing left to lose is capable of anything. Was he the one who sent that text? Where are we going? Delilah's voice was a panicked whisper. She had finally realized that we weren't heading towards the fancy part of town where she lived. We were on the wrong side of the tracks, where the streetlights were broken and the houses were small. We're not going to your apartment, I said, my voice empty of all emotion. We're going to pay a visit to someone you haven't seen in a very long time. I think you owe him a conversation. Her head snapped toward the window, her eyes scanning the familiar, run-down houses. A strangled gasp escaped her lips as she recognized the street. No, she breathed, her face turning as white as a sheet. Elizabeth. No. Please. You can't. Don't do this to me. I ignored her begging and pulled the car to the curb in front of the smallest house on the block. The paint was peeling, and the lawn was overgrown with weeds. I killed the engine. The only sound was my sister's terrified, ragged breathing. It's time to pay your debts, Delilah. As the words left my mouth, the front door of the house creaked open. A frail figure stepped out onto the porch, backlit by a yellow light. He leaned heavily on a cane, his body twisted and frail. It was Mr. Henderson, and his eyes were fixed directly on our car. Mr. Henderson stood on his porch like a statue carved from memory and pain. His eyes weren't angry. They were worse. They were tired. They were the eyes of a man who had already seen the end of the world. I opened my car door, the sound cutting through the silent street. Get out, Delilah. My sister stumbled out of the car, her legs barely holding her up. I took her arm and walked her up the cracked pavement, placing her directly in front of the man whose life she had shattered. She couldn't meet his gaze. She just stared at the rotting wood of the porch, trembling. I didn't waste any time. I pulled out my phone and held up the picture of James tied to the chair. I showed it to Mr. Henderson, my voice barely a whisper. Did you do this? I asked. My revenge was one thing, but this was a crime I wanted no part of. He looked from the phone to my eyes, and a faint, sad smile touched his lips. No, Elizabeth, he said, his voice raspy with disuse. I didn't send you that message. But I know the people who did. We were hoping you would come. He explained everything as we stood there in the cold night air. He wasn't alone. When the news of the Thompsons' fraud began to spread that afternoon, the victims found each other. 20 families, all ruined, all wanting justice. They had formed an alliance, a secret army born from shared pain. We have James, Mr. Henderson continued, his eyes flicking to Delilah, who whimpered. The wedding gave us the perfect chance to get him alone. He's not being hurt. We just need him to tell us where our money is. But he's protecting her. He won't give up the final codes without her. Why me? Why send me the text? We saw you, he said simply. We had people watching the church. When you walked out, we knew you weren't just another victim. You were a fighter. We needed a fighter to bring us the final key. I wasn't the queen in this game of chess. I was a rook, a powerful piece they had moved into position. He pushed open his front door, revealing a small, sparsely furnished living room. Come inside, he said. My heart pounded as I pushed a terrified Delilah over the threshold. This was it. There was no turning back for either of us now. The room was filled with grim-faced people. I recognized some of them from my childhood. There was Mr. Miller, who used to coach my softball team, and Mrs. Gable, who worked at the grocery store. They all looked at me, not with pity, but with a kind of shared, steely resolve. A young woman I recognized as Clara Miller, my old school friend, stood up from a table. She held a phone in her hand, and on the screen was a video of James, weeping. Clara looked past me, her eyes locking onto my sister. He's told us about the money, she said, her voice cold as a winter stone. Now you're going to tell us everything about the attempted murder. All the fight drained out of my sister under the weight of 20 pairs of eyes. Cornered by her past and her present, she finally shattered. The confession came tumbling out, a pathetic river of greed, jealousy, and excuses. She admitted to cutting the wires. She admitted to helping James steal. She admitted she did it all because she believed she deserved a better life than the one she was given. With Delilah's tearful confession recorded on Clara's phone, the alliance had everything it needed. They had proof of the fraud from James, and now, proof of attempted murder from Delilah. I took the little purple diary from my purse and placed it on the table in front of Mr. Henderson. My personal revenge was over. The fight for justice had just begun. We didn't just go to the police. The next morning, armed with confessions, bank records, and a teenage diary, we went to the biggest news station in the state. The story exploded. The tale of the society wedding, the stolen pensions, and the dark secret of a car crash was everywhere. The powerful Thompson family was ruined overnight. 1 year later, the world is a different place. James and Delilah are in prison, their beautiful faces now just numbers in a system. Mr. Thompson, who was found guilty of covering up their crimes, lost his company and his freedom. Their empire, built on the suffering of others, had crumbled to dust. The Alliance, through lawyers and courts, recovered almost all of the stolen money. My father got his retirement back. So did the Millers, the Gables, and all the other families who had lost hope. They were made whole again, not just with money, but with the knowledge that they had fought back and won. And Delilah's house, the big beautiful house on the hill she bought with my father's stolen money, was seized by the bank and put up for sale. It became a local symbol of greed and disgrace, a place no one wanted. But last month, someone finally bought it. The Alliance, in its final act of poetic justice, pooled a small part of their recovered funds. They bought the house and gave the keys to its new owner, Mr. Henderson. The man who almost lost his life now lives in the house bought with the money that was stolen from him. As for me, I never went back to being the quiet, nice girl. That Elizabeth is gone forever. I work with Clara Miller now. We run a support group for victims of financial fraud, helping them find the strength to fight back, just like we did. My sister tried to destroy my life, but instead, she showed me what it truly meant to live. My heart isn't filled with hate anymore. It's filled with a quiet, fierce pride. I learned that you can't always control what happens to you, but you can control what you do next. You can let it break you, or you can let it build you into someone stronger than you ever imagined. This story is for anyone who has ever been made to feel small, for anyone who has been wronged. Your voice matters. Your strength is real. If this story touched your heart, please like and share it, and subscribe to the channel. Because sometimes, the most powerful stories are about ordinary people who simply refuse to give up.